diplomat, you know it better than anybody else, that quite often the official reasons presented do not really reflect the reality. What is your reading of this cancellation, postponement?
Well, I think Netanyahu cited developments in Gaza as a reason for postponing his trip to Baku, but the real reason probably was that Turkey has closed its airspace to the plane that was going to carry Netanyahu to Baku. That's one of the reasons. There might be others as well. Ilham Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, can play a very constructive role in bridging the gap between Tel Aviv and Ankara, because he enjoys a very strong relationship with Israel and Netanyahu, of course, at the helm of it. And he enjoys a very trust-based relationship with Erdogan as well. So if you need an interlocutor, a party that can bring two differing positions together, I don't think anybody could be in a better position than Azerbaijan in this regard. So I think I have full trust in Ilham Aliyev, president of Azerbaijan, to play that role. And he is willingly, I think, acting on this side. But the other, more powerful, perhaps, player in this regard is Trump. Because Trump is committed, fully committed to the security of Israel. And the United States think that if they are going to pivot away from the Middle East and ISMAT to Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific region, where the real US interests lie, then you need reliable partners to take care of what's happening in the region.
Exactly.
In that regard, and Trump thinks that Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Turkey will be the cornerstone of the new regional order in the making. And if Turkey and Israel are not talking to each other, there is enmity between the two, and tensions escalating, I think the US policy will not work. Therefore, if Erdogan and Trump will be meeting anytime soon, because Erdogan invited Trump to Turkey officially, likewise Trump also has invited him to White House, and if this meeting takes place, there will be a number of issues on the agenda, but I think Turkish-Israeli relations will be probably on top of the agenda. So that's the reason why I say, I bet actually, in a bold way, in the next 4 or 5 months, Turkey and Israel might be shaking hands again in a realpolitik sense. You may hate each other, especially Netanyahu and Erdogan. I don't think that they love each other or they see eye to eye. But as you know, in the relationship between the nations, as it was Gladstone, I think the British Prime Minister in the 19th century saying that states do not have permanent enemies or friends. States have interest, and the interest will be guiding them. Therefore, in the new Middle East, I strongly believe that Israel and Turkey will have to work together. There is a new energy map emerging. There is a new security map emerging. Also, Abraham Accords will sooner or later bring Saudi Arabia also on the hold. And therefore, I think all indications show that there is going to be de-escalation of the conflict. And beyond that, there will be a handshake. Because it happened in the past as well. I think if you look at the geography in which Turkey finds itself, probably it's one of the very rare countries in the world. Surrounded by Iran. The whole world's attention is today focusing on Iran, whether there is going to be a regime change or military intervention. Then Iraq is a country divided, Kurds, Sunnis, Shias, and still elements of ISIS exist there. Look at Syria, look at ISMAT, and then also troublesome relations with Greece, what's happening in the Balkans, Russia, Ukraine war. So it's surrounded by conflict-ridden regions. And therefore, Turkey has to be very careful. But it has special relations with the United States, which we thought existed, but now we understand that it's not so special. And I also noted our friends' classification of Israel as the 52nd state of the United States. I think I agree with this assertion. And therefore, many people are talking whether there might be any competition, even conflict between Turkey and Israel because of what's happening in Syria or in Eastern Med. And I don't think this is possible. US will never allow that. Neither European Union, with which Turkey has special relations as well, customs union, and Turkey is a member of OECD, Council of Europe. At least on paper, Turkey is a Western nation. There are difficulties in this relationship though. But with Israel, personally, I believe that these are two nations having very solid historic background. And Turks and Israelis had great relationship until recently. You know what happened with the killing of some Turkish aid workers on a ship. And since then, the Gaza situation, it deteriorated. It has taken also somehow ideological underpinnings. But I personally believe that this relationship, no matter how tense, how conflictual it may look today, will improve. It has happened in the past. Now, I think Trump in the White House, and since 20th of January, I think he will make sure that, I'm not talking about Netanyahu and Erdogan, but I'm talking about Turkey and Israel will somehow reconcile, although very painful things happen in Gaza and in Lebanon perhaps, and both nations becoming the only great players in the Middle East will have to work together. There is no other way. I know that at least behind the scenes, intelligence agencies are working, discussing issues and finding some solutions, because intelligence world, as my friend knows better than I do, work on the basis of give and take. It's crude realpolitik. And it's not win-win. It's, it's not lose-lose. It's win-win in many cases. Therefore, with a push from Trump, and I have no doubt that also with the eventual collapse of the Mullah regime in Iran, or military intervention, if it happens one day, there is a requirement that both Tel Aviv and Ankara should work together. Because now, thanks to Israel, the region has been somehow cleared of proxies in the region, be Hamas or Hezbollah or Houthis in Yemen. And most of the Arab nations are quite happy about this. We haven't seen much reaction coming from them. But nothing can condone what Israel has done in terms of humanitarian disaster it generated in the region. However, I'm talking only about the real geopolitics. Realpolitik requires that Ankara and Tel Aviv need to work. Otherwise, the region will remain in great turmoil. I think there has to be a great bargain between Ankara and Tel Aviv. Israel should stop meddling so much on the Kurdish issue, be in northern Iraq or in Syria with PYD. And Turkey, I think, should be very sensitive to Israeli security concerns, especially with regard to Hamas. And then I think we might find a common ground to work together, because it cannot continue like this. Both nations, economically bound to each other, militarily, intelligence-wise in the past, more than today. I think there is still a prospect of both nations shaking hands and work together. The alternative will be disastrous for both nations.
So the common point here, I suppose, is that both Turkey and Israel need to cooperate to be able to pursue their common interests, of course. And Mr. Gülçin, in one of his latest articles, said that while a direct confrontation between Turkey